On this week's episode of the Crowdfunding Nerds, we're joined by Chris George of Room and Board to discuss the World Series board gaming event, which happens in Las Vegas. We cover sponsorships of this event, the vision of the event, and how you might be interested in getting involved. Let's jump into it.
Game begin.
Let's go.
Go back to the shadow. You shall not fail. Crowdfunding Nerds.
Amazing.
Hey everybody, and welcome to another awesome episode of Crowdfunding Nerds. I am your host, Andrew Lowen, and I am joined as always by Sean, and now a guest, Chris George of the World Series of Board Games, as well as the Room and Board YouTube channel. Welcome to the show.
Hey, thanks for having me. Hi, everybody listening. I'm thrilled to be here with my favorite crowdfunding nerds ever. Yeah, I'm excited. I'm excited just to
We're
hang
the
out
only
and chat.
crowdfunding nerds you know, right?
I live in the crowdfunding space. Really, that's what I do mostly in Room and Board is look at crowdfunding stuff. So, but just from our little intros and interactions, I can already tell that we're going to be best buds.
That's awesome. Well, I really enjoy a lot of your content. And so what we wanted to to frame this episode for those listening, the intent is, number one, we wanted to talk about the World Series of Board Games, or World Series of Board Gaming, which is kind of like a board game esport thing happening. And a little bit about the future of board games is like the vision for that organization and what it exists, where you're going and whatnot. But then also, you have a lot of really great and well-reasoned arguments and discussions and just thinking that you do out loud on the Room and Board YouTube channel that I really enjoy. And I wanted to get a little bit into kind of how you distill information, because there's, we are attacked and impacted constantly by data. And it's like data needs to be transitioned into information, which then needs to be turned into something actionable that I is useful to share with someone else. And so I just think that you have a really just most of the content that I've seen, you do that really well. And so I'd like to kind of get into your head a little bit.
Absolutely. I was nodding enthusiastically that whole time you were talking. I'm excited to talk about all of it.
Awesome. Okay. Well then, so first of all, let's just get into you and who is Chris George? What do you do? And let's just like introduce like the World Series of Board Gaming, as well as like your Room and Board YouTube channel and what you do there.
Yeah, so I am an actor. I do theater, I do film, voiceover, and that's what I would call my primary profession. That is what I went to school for. I went to the University of Windsor, graduated in like 2011, and then in the pandemic, all of my contracts dried up. I had work, and then suddenly I didn't, and suddenly I was sitting at home doing nothing, as many of us were doing, and so I had wanted to do a board game YouTube channel for a long time. That had been something that had been on my mind. I got into board gaming back in 2012 when a friend who I was working with at Shakespeare by the Sea in Halifax introduced me to Catan. That was my gateway game. That was my drug. And I thought, wow, there's a game that exists where if I talk long enough, I can win? That's incredible. That is so good. And then I loved all like the mechanisms of it. I love the modular board. I'd never seen a modular board before. And so that got me set down a path of board gaming. And so I'd always really enjoyed board gaming. And then during the pandemic, I decided to get more serious and to apply myself creatively and start the Room and Board YouTube channel. So a friend of mine was designing their first game. They were going to Kickstarter with it. It was called Vigilante. Reed Muscol is the designer. And I thought, okay, perfect. This is a great way to sort of jumpstart the YouTube channel, right? It's a friend was going to be doing his first thing. He's going to need content on it. I was like, hey, give it over to here. I'll make that my first video. Took the game, stole it for 6 months, filmed a playthrough, took forever to edit it, and then finally, when his game launched, I launched Room and Board as well, and then sort of just took off from there. And honestly, my delving into the crowdfunding sphere was sort of predicated by that was how I could access games. I'm an actor, but I'm a theater actor, which means I don't have much money. And so for the first year of the pandemic, I was watching a lot of board gaming YouTube and watching people seemingly with infinite money recommend everything. And I thought, well, I can't do that. That's not me. And so I got some success. And I think where my channel got traction was my series, The 5 Reasons You Shouldn't Back, which I started with Marvel United X-Men because I was so overwhelmed with FOMO and excitement for Marvel United X-Men. I thought, everybody's getting this game. This looks so amazing. Look at all these cool characters that I love. I need to get this. And then I thought, wait a minute, you know nothing about this game, you dumb idiot baby. Why don't you go and find out about it? And so I made that video just for me, and then it really resonated with people and the video was essentially like, hey, have you read the rule book? Do you know anything about this game? Do you know that you can get a copy of this at Walmart for like $20 right now instead of waiting 2 years and spending like $120? And then I went out to Walmart and I got a copy and I played it and I was like, oh, I hate this. This is good. This is good that I did this sort of like litmus test. And that was like a real good, like eye-opening experience for me because I can see how I can get swept up in the hype, right? Like we all do. There's things it's easy to get excited about things that we love, and especially diving into the crowdfunding sphere. There's so many amazing things out there, or so many things that at least look amazing. And so that was why I made that video. And then people started saying, hey, can you do a video for this? And hey, can you do a video for this? Like, I need to be talked off the ledge. And I was like, okay, cool. I'm not alone in this. And that's, I think, where a lot of the traction of my channel went forward. And then I started doing weekly crowdfunding coverage every Monday. I do a show, Crowdfunding Countdown is what I call it, because that was what the title was on Board Game Geek, where I was first getting the information of the campaigns that were ending that week. And I was like, okay, it's better to look at things at the end of their life cycle because A, then they haven't canceled and you don't get disappointed. B, you can see the stretch goals, so you can better analyze the value that you're getting as a consumer, right? Rather than backing something right away, you can say, okay, I want to see the full picture. And then people also seem to resonate with that. And I wanted to do something pretty more in-depth coverage. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to read the rule books for every single game that pops up. And try to distill that information if I can, hopefully in an amusing way, but also in an informative way, right? Just to because I've always been kind of mechanism based, and that was kind of hit home by me getting swept up by Marvel United X-Men and not knowing how it played and not really knowing anything about it. So that was just like my journey and how the Room and Board channel has evolved. I do other stuff on the channel too, but like that is a weekly show that I'm now on episode like 178 of. So I've been doing that for over 3 years and have read, like, I think I'm at 2,700 campaigns. So around 2,700 rule books, depending upon if they're there or if they aren't. And then, so earlier on in my YouTube journey, I heard about the World Series of Board Gaming. And so the World Series of Board Gaming happened the first year in 2022. And I started my channel, really started around May 2021. And so I heard about this. I was like, man, this seems really cool. Like, this is I love playing games competitively. Like, when I play hard. I like challenging myself. I like the puzzle of games. I won a local Snakes and Lattes Catan tournament back in 2013. So, I'm pretty much the best Catan player. I don't want to brag. Yeah, you're pulling it out of me here. I couldn't. It was a clean sweep.
Hey folks, sorry to interrupt this episode, but I want to tell you about the Crowdfunding Nerds Academy. We have condensed over 200 episodes of actionable information into 3 courses. We don't hold anything back. This is a great place if you want to go to the next level, if you want to speed up your learning process of everything that you have been learning by listening to this podcast. Go to crowdfundingnerds.com/academy or do a simple Google search, Crowdfunding Nerds Academy, to learn more.
Well, I've always liked that idea. Then I entered into a ticket to the only other competition I entered into was a Ticket to Ride tournament where my my brother and I entered, and then my mom showed up. She surprised us and showed up and entered into it as well, and that was very fun. And she was like ranked second going into like the finals. They had the final 8, so I was ranked 8th, so I just barely made the finals, and she was second, and everybody was coming up to her and they were saying, "How, like, what's your strategy? What are you doing? How are you so good at this?" And she's like, "Oh, well, I just tried to build the trains." Yeah, and they're like, "Okay,
Yeah.
okay, but like, what do you do?" She's like, "Oh, well, I look at my destination cards and I see that I have to go from this point to this point, and I just try to build there as effectively as I can." And she just like was explaining basic rules of the game. They're like, "No, what's your strategy?" She's like, "Oh, well, sometimes I draw from the top of the deck, or if I see colors I need, I draw those colors." And just like
That's so good.
the most basic strategy. Anyway, so I've always liked the concept of tournaments, and I heard about WSBG, and I was like, this sounds incredible. Like, this is so cool. The winner, they were saying you could win these championship rings. Like, the winner wins $25,000. Honestly, the prize doesn't even matter all that. Didn't even matter all that much to me. I was like, this is just really neat. But also it was a bit more expensive. Again, because I'm a cheap, poor actor who decided to make it big on board game YouTube. So I am still a cheap, poor actor. And I was like, well, I want to get involved in this. So I sent them a message, and I just kind of cold called them. And I was like, hey, listen, you're probably going to want somebody to host your event. I'm an actor. I'm now in the board gaming space. This was when I was around like 5K subscribers, I think. I was like, put me in. Like, I can do a setup. I know the games pretty well. I can commentate on them, and I'll probably need a little bit of help in the back end, but we'll figure it out. And so we had a call and we talked a little bit, and they're like, well, we want a host, but we're going to get people who people actually care about. But we like you, so why don't you direct and produce the whole thing? They said it nicer than that, but that was essentially what they were like. But they're like, but we like you a lot, so why don't you direct and produce the whole thing? And I was like, the part where I was like, I'm better for the on-screen and like would need a little bit of help on the back. And they're like, yeah, you'll figure it out. I was like, okay. So I figured it out. I went down the first year, and we just recorded on like iPhone 8s and tried to just do a proof of concept sort of thing. We had a really weird setup where we couldn't wire anything because the commentary room was so far away from the table. So we had to do it all wirelessly, and we figured it out, and they liked working with me, and I liked working with them. And so then they brought me on. John, who's the chairman of the board, he was like, we're bringing it on full time. I was like, no, you're not. I'm still an actor. I still have my own stuff. But I'm happy to do this like part time. I'm happy to do whatever is I can do to help the event, because I liked everybody involved, and I like the team behind it, and I like the event. I think it's a really cool event. I think people are really enjoying it as well. And so then I was brought on in a variety of capacities. I gave myself the title of director of production, so that because I deal with all of their media, and we have juggled me around what's the best fit for me in the organization. I was dealing with some of their marketing. I was dealing with a bunch of stuff. It's a very small team, so everybody wears a lot of hats. But essentially what I do now for them is deal with any of their media. And I've been doing some sort of regional convention outreach as well. So I'll go to some game playing conventions and run mini tournaments and get people excited and inform people about the event, which is great because it allows me to go to tournaments and hang out with people who know me from Room and Board. And so it's a really awesome meld of worlds that I feel very fortunate to be able to do. And I really like the event. I think it's super cool. When I first saw the championship rings that they hand out, they're like Super Bowl style, like $3,000 rings, the name of the game etched on the side.
Wow. Yeah.
I don't know if you guys have like a visual component to the podcast generally, but I can send you a ring, like a couple of the rings with like footage if you want, because I have the videos of them spinning around. They're so cool. When I first saw the rings, and I say this every time I talk about it, I always say this when I'm at a convention describing them, but I literally said to John, I was like, no, I quit. I quit. I have to enter. I have to win one of these myself. They are so cool. And even though people like competing for like the money prize, it's the rings and the bragging rights that they really like and enjoy, and is the ultimate bragging rights as you're moving your pieces across the table and have the ring on your hand. It's like, oh, sorry, yeah,
rings,
yeah. Let me just take my move. Oh, are you sure you want to attack me there? Are you really sure? I hope you can think about that for just a second. So yeah, but yeah, it's a really cool vibe. I really enjoy WSBG as an event, and it has it has grown, and they hope for it to continue to grow. And every year on the media side, I just try to make it a little bit better with as the zero budget that we have.
So how many events have you done so far, or how many events have there been?
Yeah, so we're going into our 4th year, which will happen at the end of September of 2025. That'll be September 19th to the 23rd at the Horseshoe Casino in Las Vegas. Because it takes place in Vegas because the World Series of Poker takes place in Vegas,
Yep.
and because there's like a direct flight to Vegas from pretty much anywhere, I feel, or at least it used to be. That's what my father always tells me the story of. He met a businessman flying from Vegas who was based out of Vegas, and he's like, oh, why are you based out of Vegas? He said, because I can literally fly anywhere I want to from Vegas for like meetings. I was like, okay, cool. Yeah, so we're going into our 4th year. So we've had 3 years so far, three different champions. Yeah, Hans Lee, Angela Tao, and Jun Kim. They are our 3 WSBG champions, and then a bunch of different ring winners, up to 16 ring winners every year. Although some people have 1, 2 rings or multiple rings.
And then, in terms of the games that people are competing with, is it just you're selecting them randomly? Or are you very careful in what you select? Are publishers sort of bidding and saying, "Hey, can you feature my game?" Is there a bit of advertising happening here? How does the game selection work?
Yeah, so the game selection is entirely decided by our tournament director. Essentially, there's no publisher bidding that ever happens. The core of WSBG. And I guess I'll explain the tournament structure format for everybody who's unfamiliar. And so with WSBG, there are 16 different games in the event. All of these 16 games will have their own tournament. And so each one of those tournaments will be, 3 to 4 rounds. You will have a Terraforming Mars tournament, a Brass Birmingham tournament. The games that we have currently in our lineup of 16, which, let's see if I can rattle them off, are Brass Birmingham, Terraforming Mars, Wingspan, White Castle, Splendor, Azul, Cascadia, Castles of Burgundy, Arc Nova, Dune Imperium Uprising. I'm looking around my shelves. Raw, Great Western Trail. I'm at 12. The other 4 will come to me. They're on the website. I could have just pulled this up and had it as a better list, but we're doing it live. We'll do it live.
Twilight Imperium on there at all?
Twilight Imperium's not on there. It's a bit too long.
Okay.
So the structure of WSBG is you'll take these 16 games and you'll have a tournament for each one of them, and you will crown a ring champion. So they're called ring events because you win that cool, awesome ring that I've been talking about. And we will then end up with sort of 16 champions, sometimes less if people win multiple rings. Earth is another one of them. Lost Ruins Varnak is another one of them. We'll get there. And so once you take these 16 rings, they will all go to the semifinals of the main event, the whole WSBG, to compete for the championship, where you will play a random game out of the 16 that is not the game that you won. So if you are the Castles of Burgundy champion, Castles of Burgundy is drawn randomly. Castles of Burgundy, you are sitting at table 2, which is a choir. Choir is also one of them. We're at 15. And so we will randomly seed these semifinal games.
Is a more exciting acquire, by the way. It's like
yeah, I saw it's. I remember reading the rule book back when it was on crowdfunding, and I remember the comparisons for sure. I just think acquire is so incredible that a game from 1963 still holds up. Like. Yeah. It's friggin' wild to me that is still something that is actively fun to watch. Even Acquire's my favorite game to watch out of the 16. It's not my favorite game to play out of the 16. I think I'd like some of the other games more, but it is my favorite game to watch just because I see all the stocks happening. And I just think it's a really really neat event. Heat's the last one. I cheated and I looked
There
it
you
up.
go. I was going to say Heat's a good one. That'd be a good one.
Yeah, Heat was just added
Now,
in.
how is it so when you have people watching board games, so you're doing is you're playing the event. There's not necessarily like a huge audience there, or is there? But then the main medium of content that you get people to see and consume, is that on YouTube? Is that in person? Is that, can you explain that? And
Yeah,
how do you make it interesting? You know what I mean? Especially if it's
that's a
like
good
watching a
question.
board game, right? Yeah.
yeah, for sure. So that is the crux of the challenge. How do you make it interesting? That we have been working towards for these past 3 years in terms of trying to make it as interesting as possible and make it better. In terms of the tournament, we're pretty, and I guess we'll circle back to how the games are chosen in a second, and the structure of that tournament, but how we set it up. The tournament is pretty strict in terms of we don't want a live audience. Right now, we don't want a live audience. I don't know if that'll change in the future, but anybody in the room, we don't want the players to be distracted. We also don't want a player to be having a card cam. You know what I mean? Some of the games have cards, some of the games don't have cards. But if you're sitting with Terraforming Mars and somebody's sitting with like Demos Down in their hand, and you have somebody in the audience who's a friend of someone else who has the scratch in their head tell, right? Like there's just too many opportunities for cheating there. And even when we are live streaming, we are very diligent that if the players are going to the washroom, like they cannot take phones with them, right? We have the live stream on a bit of a delay so that any information, there wouldn't be any information leaked, but because we want to make sure that that everything that cheating is not able to happen. We haven't had any reports of cheating in the 3 years that we have been doing this, which is great because board gamers are generally a pretty great audience as well, but. So in terms of like watching the event, there's nothing that we can do in person currently, just because we want to keep the integrity of the tournament. And so we then switch it to YouTube. So we live streamed just on YouTube right now. Well, we've contemplated using Twitch, but I think YouTube is a larger space for board gaming currently. And we've talked a little bit with Twitch to see if we could get a partnership going with them, and if that ever happened, then we would be happy to switch to Twitch. But until that happens, we probably would stay on YouTube. Just we want to be where the audience tends to live, and currently, I believe the board gaming audience is more on YouTube than Twitch. And so we will live stream. We live streamed on the World Series of Board Gaming's official YouTube channel. And then the last 2 years, we partnered with Dice Tower and we live streamed on their channel. So we did last year, we did a whole day, a whole week coverage of fun at WSBG. And so we live streamed 2 of the final games every night. And then we also had panels and discussions and playing games with attendees, just like other fun games that people wanted to play that just we drew from the pool of people in the open gaming. We say, hey, who wants to play a game with Tom right now? We're playing Cosmic Encounter. And so we would draw like 5 names and they would go and they would play that game, right? And so just to keep the whole week of programming, have it be like a big fun, always something to watch that's happening at the World Series and related to the World Series, and then live streaming a couple of those games as well. So we spend most of our time on the YouTube platform in terms of content distribution, and then in terms of how to make it exciting, that's where we have brought commentary into play, ideally. And so the ultimate goal for WSBG, and this might be skipping ahead in terms of where we're going or in terms of the flow of this conversation, but the ultimate goal would be to get to that esports level, right? To be on ESPN. Like I was talking to John before this, and he's like, yeah, and tell him not ESPN Ocho. It's ESPN 1 or 2. Like that's where we want to get.
Great. I mean, I love the vision.
Yeah.
It's like
yeah.
a lot of people that will say, oh, that's ridiculous. Just you have to have a big, hairy, audacious goal.
Yeah.
It's like the North Star. If you don't have the North Star, you can't sail from, I don't know, the Americas to the
wherever they
UK's.
sail to.
I don't know. Yeah, wherever they sail. I don't sail.
Wherever. Yeah. I'm sure they're sailing somewhere, and I'm sure the North Star is very helpful.
Yeah.
Well,
So,
I love this
yeah.
idea because I'm a bit of a Quake fanatic. I watch, QuakeCon every year, and I suck at Quake. I'm really bad at it, but I can certainly appreciate the people who've been playing this game for 20 odd years or more, and their skill level. And one thing I really appreciate about Quake is that whoever I introduce it to, they can enjoy it because it's such a simple game to understand. In terms of a spectator's sport or spectator game, I think that's something to keep in mind. Is that a lot of the advantages of esports? It's not so much the game itself, but it's how can people spectate and can they enjoy spectating it?
Yeah.
So if someone was, let's say a publisher is listening to this and saying, "Hey, I think I've got a great game that would be a perfect fit for like a tournament, an esports event, and it's got this really great spectator quality," who can they reach out to in order to like maybe pitch their game to be submitted, or the game's kind of set in stone and they're not going to change?
Yeah, so there's multiple things that can happen. The games aren't set in stone. Every year, we'll rotate out some games. And so the first year we rotated out 4. The second year we rotated out 3. This last year we rotated out 2. And so the games that got dropped in the first year were Catan, surprisingly, Carcassonne, Blood Rage, and Dominant Species Marine. Unsurprisingly, it's an amazing game, and I'm thrilled that it was in because it made me actually play the game. But I'm not surprised that because people haven't heard of it. And essentially how games get sort of dropped from the lineup, and they might come back, is mainly based around attendance. There weren't a lot of people who signed up for the Catan part of it, and that, I guess, makes sense because Catan has their own large tournament presence. And so I think either people were afraid that there were going to be a lot of those tournament gamers coming into it in this sort of best all-around board gamer format that we're putting forward, or for various reasons. But those got dropped out, and then we experimented with Patchwork as a 2-player format. And that was okay, but that one has since left. And this past year, we dropped Ticket to Ride got dropped out, and Dune Imperium got dropped out, and we replaced it with Dune Imperium Uprising. So really just sort of a one shift. In terms of like running a tournament, we've also housed a number of like national tournaments in under the WSBG banner. So we have our 16 games that's in the tournament. Our tournament director will generally try to decide upon a number of factors: time, how long is it going to take? Is it viable for a 3-round tournament or a 4-round tournament? That's why Twilight Imperium could never be in the competition, because you'd have to do it over all the 4 days, right? We just don't have the space and the time. And also, if it's drawn because of the format, in the semifinals, you play that random game out of the 16. And then in the finals, you also play another random game out of the 16 that nobody has won. You also get a veto. So Twilight Imperium would be vetoed every time. But we want to make sure we have to pick games that will fit into a certain time just for the how long we have the tournament hall for. Essentially, it's just a logistics thing that factors into that. And we also want to pick games that would be exciting for tournament play. We want to pick games that people have played, that people are actively excited to play. We don't want to pick games that are too old and the meta has been established, because then you'll have the top 10 Agricola players. Not that I'm saying I don't have any choice in what games get put in and when they do and when they don't. So if I say like, oh, we'll never have Agricola, then we have Agricola next year, that may happen. Who knows? It likely won't, but like we wouldn't throw that in there because we'd have like the 20 people who have mathed out Agricola for the past 18 years. I think it was 2007, and then that's it, right? And so that's why the newer titles are probably going to see more addition into WSBG, because those metas haven't been established just from like a tournament balance standpoint. And so for the choosing of the tournaments, it's a lot of it is based upon the player experience and what makes a great player experience, and not a lot of that decision making process is really focused around necessarily the watchability of the game. It's just, we're doing these games because these games are good and because players would like them and they fit into the tournament, and then we'll figure out the watchability on the latter end. And so that kind of makes my job a little bit harder because we have all these different varied games that have all these different setups, which in a perfect world, I would have, 6 cameras on every table, getting the tableaus of Earth versus the tile drafting of Azul is a much different puzzle to do, and having to do that with a similar setup because it's basically just me, and I bring a friend of mine down to help me during the week, but to running around trying to manage and capture all the footage. We can't have people who are like live monitoring the tables yet until we get to ESPN, and then we can do all those sorts of like dynamic presentation. And so the way that we get people in to accessing these games is hopefully through the commentary, because you have such a wide swath of complexity in these games, and it's generally the commentary that can help bring people in and hopefully guide them as to what is going on in the game, what strategic decisions people are thinking through. I think what I like seeing in commentary is when the commentators are like, hey, I think they're building up for this thing, and then that thing happens, and they go, yep, we knew that was happening. You go, okay, so there is like a defined strategy. There is a thing happening, even if the commentators don't have perfect information. So for Terraforming Mars, for example, we just don't have the resources currently to get a card cam for every person. I've tried talking to Game Theory Tables, who has donated tables, and I would love for them to be able to get me a custom table where I can get the card cams. But again, each game is different, so it's kind of working within those restrictions and limitations. But even with that, having commentators who know the game can be like, yeah, I bet they have this card in their hand, or they're probably looking for these cards. And so then when those cards get played, you can say that's why they hit that 6 energy bump, because they had physics complex in their hand, right? And so having people who know the game to that capacity, I think, is beneficial in terms of bringing people in and allowing them to access the game, and then hopefully getting them excited about the game and interested about the game, which then allows the hobby to grow, which is ultimately the goal of WSBG, is very sort of player focused and designer focused, and wanting to put board games on the map, just like poker's on the map. Darts are on the map. People were playing dodgeball on ESPN, or cornhole, or whatever. There are all these things that people can watch if you make them accessible. And there's so many games in our hobby that are so much more rich than poker. I mean, I like playing poker. Poker's fine. Poker's fun to watch. It's all that YouTube recommends to me, because I've watched so many poker streams to try to get ideas of how I can structure things, right? But I would much rather play a game of Raw in terms of bluffing and bidding than poker. I think that there are so many dynamic experiences that people just still don't know about as the board gaming hobby grows, and hopefully World Series can be instrumental in helping push that forward as well.
Yeah, it's funny because I was a semi-professional poker player. We were talking offline about how I was a professional Hearthstone player at one point, and I played online, 10 tables on Full Tilt Poker and Poker Stars, and this was right before they got shut down by the government for, being illegal gambling sites and whatnot. I got my money out right before that, but I decided
Nice.
I beat the game eventually,
Right.
but I had a friend of mine continue on, and he's won bracelets, and he's been at the final table of the World Series of Poker like 5 times, and
Cool.
lives in Vegas with like 5 or 6 Lamborghinis and 2 garages and all this stuff. And it's pretty wild. But the reason that I was always attracted to poker was because money made people take it seriously and play seriously. And what I really enjoy in board gaming is that people take it seriously, like over no apparent, super upside. Like the money is the upside in poker, and the downside, it's the reason that you're stressed about a particular move, and the reason that, having the second best hand is the absolute worst, thing that could happen to you, right? And it just makes for those kind of tense moments and big payoffs if you read somebody correctly, and if you folded correctly, then you may not ever know. But like one time I had a king high flush. I'm like, oh, there's a 4th card that just came out that was a diamond, so I still have the king high flush. But if this person had the ace, the whole time they just kind of lucked into beating
Yeah.
me, and I could waste a lot of money right now. And I folded, and they ended up having the ace, and I just felt so smart.
Yeah.
But most of the time, you don't, they won't show you, especially if it counts, and they don't want you to be able to read them better and whatnot. But having those little cameras helps a lot. Like, oh, that guy
Yeah.
was super smart. And so it's cool to, I like the idea of commentary because it helps the audience to feel clever. It's like,
For sure.
I see what he's doing. Now that the commentator kind of opened my eyes to this, I wonder if he's going to do this other thing instead. And that's pretty cool. And one of the challenges, I think, is like with this type of content, poker is just one game. Whereas
Yeah.
the, Terraforming Mars and then Ra and Ark Nova and Earth and whatnot, all of those games, that's like, I've played about half of them. I have, a third of them on my shelf, and I have several others in the want to play list and everything. But, like, I'd understand everything on Wingspan or Terraforming Mars, most things and whatnot. And, I'd understand nothing about like Acquire, for example, because I've never personally played it.
Yeah.
And so to get an audience to watch, each of those things, I think is some of the where the challenge is. But I think the solution is in the commentary to be able to break it down. You've got the play-by-play guy and the color guy, where the color guy's funny and entertaining, and the play-by-play guy is like really helping you learn the game. He's like the human rule book for everything.
Yeah.
So I find that combination to be very interesting.
Yeah, and we try to get that combination with bringing designers to the event. And so we have in the past in the live streams we have had commentators, people from the Dice Tower because we were working with them, but other content creators as well in the space. Paula Deming now loves Acquire because of the World Series. Paula Deming was coming again, and she was like, "I want to comment on Acquire because I just had such a great time with it." I was like, "Yeah, absolutely, we could make that happen." And she was like getting so stoked about it. Obviously, we couldn't have the designer there because Sid Saxon is no longer in this plane of existence. But we had Matthias, who designed Ark Nova, come down. And so when we did the Ark Nova semifinal, it was Matthias Viga and Tom Vassell who were commentating. So Tom was just talking about how much he loves zoos and his favorite animals. And Matthias was like, no, okay, I want to talk about the game here and like
That's
focusing in on there. And so like finding that balance is for sure, I think, key to people's enjoyment. And for me, it kind of helps stem with anytime in post-production, I'll grab the designer if I can, because it's often me doing the commentary with a guest. And so I'll either grab the designer or I'll grab a previous ring winner who is good at the game, and go back and forth from there to try to make sure that there is that expert at the table who can help guide people through these somewhat pretty complex games. If it's an easier game with an easier rule set, even still, there's a nice depth of complexity and strategy with Azul and Splendor that the good players figure out. But so some games like Brass need a little bit more on the rules explanation and the insight into the strategy behind it, for sure.
Yep. Well, go ahead, John.
So, Chris, in terms of sponsorships, let's say a publisher or game developers listen to this. This sounds great. Do you have opportunities where people can get their logo on people's shirts or on screen, or are there sort of in-stream shout-outs? What are the kind of sponsorship opportunities that are available to publishers?
Absolutely.
Or even retail chains or whoever?
Yeah. Contact us and we'll make something happen. Really is the current idea. Obviously, for the 16 games, how we work at it a little bit backwards, because we choose the games and then we reach out to the companies and we say, "Hey, your game's in. Do you want to sponsor us?" And sometimes they go, "Well, our game's in, so no." And we go, "Okay," or they say, "Yes, our game's in. That's so great. Let us help you out. Let us like give you the copies that you need." And for the ring, we want this to be sort of really player focused. So for a lot of the sponsorships, we're like, "Hey, like provide us with games. Send your designers down. Like make sure that they're taken care of. Like do all this to sort of elevate the player experience first." And then that we'll call that as a sponsorship, and we'll make sure your logo's everywhere. You can send me, like people will send me video ads, and I will insert them during the live streams as well. We'll have a list of when we're going to shout people out, and make sure that like we can get their games played. I think our partnership with the Dice Tower has sort of incentivized that in a sense, of potentially making that more exciting to get a shout out from a larger channel. But I think it's just people, the publishers have really stepped up. They really have. So many publishers see the merit of this event and see the merit of helping out and wanting to be involved. And the more a publisher is involved, like the more excited we are, the more we want to shout these publishers out like to the rooftop in terms of those who want to work with us and work well. Like so many of them have stepped up. Like I want to list people off right now, but I don't want to forget people. But I know that like the vast majority of the people have like Asmodee has been really great. 25th Century Games has been really great. Capstone Games has been awesome. Roxley has been awesome. CGE has been awesome. And then we're doing this thing now with publishers that we want every one of our players to walk away with something cool for a promo. So Direwolf is doing like a promo card for Dune Imperium Uprising where it's called Pivotal Gambit. And it doubles the reward for combat for whoever wins. It's like that big risk reward sort of thing. And so that's great in terms of like the 16 games. But then also we have opportunity for publishers to have their own national tournaments, and we can stream those, we can film those as well. We can make sure that we capture the live final of the Red Cathedral tournament. So DeVere DeVere's worked with us for a couple of years, and they weren't in the competition, but they had a Red Cathedral. They've been having their Red Cathedral National Championship at our event, which we have live streamed. And the winner, DeVere, puts up like a trip to Essen for them, like a plane ticket and hotel stay, and like a 3-day trip to friggin' Essen to participate in the Red Cathedral tournament. And so if a publisher has, I don't want to talk out of school because I know some other things that we're trying to work out for this. I think I can I'll talk about it. Who cares? We're probably somebody will, but we're doing like the first ever werewolf championship with Bezier, you know? Like we're trying to figure out like a fun tournament structure for werewolf points. Because in the outside the tournament area, we have all these. We started this last year. They're called Phoenix tournaments. You can rise from the ashes. They're little pods of where people can buy in for $5, $20, $25, whatever it is. And if you win 2 rounds, you then walk away with the pot. Right, rather than going into the casino and throwing $20 on red, you can throw $20 on Wingspan and see if you walk away with like 250. And so in that structure, it gives us a lot of structure to be hosting other events because we have staff there, we have people who will run it. We had a Dice Throne national tournament there, which we also live streamed. Not last year, but the previous year in 2023. Mm-hmm. And so because of that, like we want to. The World Series wants to offer a place, not just for the 16 games, like that's what we have chosen to run for our tournament, but also be a place where people can house their national events, where they can, if there's a publisher out there who's listening who like has a game that has never had a national tournament, they could contact us, send us the copies of the game, and we can make a national tournament happen from the players, who maybe get kicked out in the first round, or from the players who are just there for open gaming. Because we use the Dice Tower West's library of 4,000 games, so we've got an open gaming ticket as well. If people just want to have Dice Tower West, but with a really cool tournament where you can win $25,000 also as part of it.
It's a nice benefit.
And so with that, those are these sort of opportunities that we want to put forward. Again, things that help focus on the player experience, give our players more things to get excited about, and then also can highlight publisher-specific games by having those tournaments and by being able to publicize them and say, like, listen, like we are investing in this game, like we are supporting the players who want to play this game. or supporting the players who just want to pick it up and learn it on the day as well, because we have a lot of good board gamers at WSBG who are omni gamers, and that's kind of, the structure of the event is the idea that if you're a good board gamer, those skills are applicable, across a wide variety of genres, and so it's really exciting to have that pool of people in the room, and I think. I think with anything, especially like we're no longer in our infancy; we're in our 4th year now. But in the early years, there were some people, there were some publishers who jumped on early and took that chance and supported us, and that from like a consumer loyalty standpoint, always makes a difference. And from me, I see these publishers who also have like similar mindsets. This is now like Chris George, not WSBG Chris George talking. This is just Chris George talking. Like I see the publishers who have a similar mindset to me, and I'm like, cool. Like these people, like they want to invest in cool things for their player base. Like they want to grow the hobby, and like that always makes me personally excited. And so like I do everything that I can to highlight these publishers and to give them good value, and to give them hopefully return on their investment by getting their game more popular and more out there, and people seeing it and getting it into the hands of the people who will enjoy it.
That's fantastic. I have, my games that I make are cooperative, and I see potential for events. In fact, we last year we ran an event in September, which is very similar to a World of Warcraft raid, where you take a bunch of friends and you kill a big boss and whatnot. And so I created a raid boss for Deliverance, and I had 26 players fight against me. So using their own copies of Deliverance and whatnot,
Cool.
it was super fun. And it was so popular that we're including it in. So we ran a Kickstarter in later in September, and one of the scenarios that we're including is the raid that we ran, and
Cool.
it was that popular so that others can run it too. But I'd like to run a raid for 1,000 players at the same time, and it'd be
You want to do it
a fun thing to do.
WSBG? We can make that happen. Easy peasy.
That's awesome.
I think that would be awesome. I think that'd be so cool.
So
like,
yeah,
that's the mandate of WSBG is like they're just a very excited. It's an excited team, and they want the gamers to have an awesome time. Like part of the energy of WSBG that is so infectious. It comes from our chairman of the board, John, who just runs around trying to make sure everybody has a great time. He puts on intro walk-in music for every one of the games. He picks out a song that's like perfect. He gives everybody a high five as they enter for their first game, as they're walking down the line. I think
which one is AC/DC Thunderstruck? Because that's obviously one of them. Heat, probably.
Heat, yeah. I think it was Heat, honestly. I think Thunderstruck was in there, yeah, for sure. John this year wants we're gonna have a prize wall for people. This is exclusively because John just runs around in the convention and is like, "Who's from the furthest away? You get $50 to the to the store." And so John wanted specifically a prize wall of like extra games from publishers, so that when he's running around trying to get people hyped, or in the morning, he could be like, "Go to the prize wall, get yourself some from the prize wall."
Awesome.
Like that's the atmosphere that he wants to kind of foster and make it a fun experience for the players. And so that kind of is our philosophy for publishers reaching out. If it will add value to our players, we're excited about it, and we'll sing your praises to the moon and back. Like Chip Theory Games got involved last year, and they added in 20 strong copy. Like Chip Theory Games are mostly cooperative games, right? They have Cloudspire, which is too heavy to be in the main tournament. But most of their stuff is cooperative. But they added in 20 strong copies into everybody's swag bag at the beginning. We have an award that we gave out to like the best sportsmanship, and we gave them a stay and play to come back next year, like a free hotel and entry to again foster the environment of board gamers that we want to foster. And Chip Theory loved that. And they're like, you know what? You get a strategist pledge as well. And I know that like John will die for Chip Theory now. Like he's like, anything they want, we want to put them up, because like people who invest in this event, like, we also want to put them forward and champion, because I think it's just it's for the players. Like, that is the core value of the tournament, and what at least everybody on the back end, the management team, keep on focusing on, is that this is an event for the players, and anything to make the players experience better, that is what we want. And
Kind of trickles down to the audience and everything as well
Mhm.
as an infectious positive
100%.
event. Hey, so Crowdfunding Nerds, it's about 45-ish minutes into this episode, and we had in our discussion with Chris, we talked about two very different topics. So we actually thought that we would split them into two episodes and provide kind of a part two to episode one, where which is right now with Sean and I only. We're just gonna share a little bit about what our maybe some reflections that we just had, right, Sean? On the World Series of Board Gaming, what did you feel like? Overall, what do you make of an event like that? Do you think it has a chance of, like, obviously the big goal is one day to be equal to poker and hit ESPN. Do you think that that it's an event that will build momentum, or what are your thoughts on that?
I think there's certainly the possibility of it. I think it comes down to the spectator element. I think that's going to be the hardest thing for them to overcome, because board games are fun and you get people to play them, but what's going to get people to watch a board game? So unless you have people who are very entertaining to watch, they're very
Like
bombastic.
Will Wheaton
Yeah, it's
playing,
almost exactly like that. We kind of have like the comedy elements to it, or they're just very entertaining to watch. This is where I think focusing on celebrities might do really well for them. So if they had, like the best
celebrity commentators.
well, not no actual players. So if they had,
Okay.
So then people could kind of root for their kind of favorite YouTuber or whatever, and they then bring their audience to this event, and it's more kind of about entertainment rather than who's going to win. Might be a great way to kind of kickstart the event and get a lot of eyeballs on the other tournaments that are running. And then there might be opportunities for designers to introduce games here, which might be very good tournament games. I think having a good tournament game is going to be very different than having a very good kind of casual game you play at home. So we might see more games being designed specifically for tournament settings, where spectating is a part of that experience. So it'll be interesting to see if any publishers kind of can work that out. But I do think there's certainly an opportunity for this to be leveraged, even in terms of publishers getting their games in front of a different audience or a wider audience in terms of sponsorships is very exciting to see.
Yeah, yeah. It's interesting because, so first of all, I actually do think that Chris has that type of charisma, that Will Wheaton type, and he's always, from our discussion with him, he's always in the booth as the color commentator and whatnot, or managing those people. And I think that it almost, in a funny way, it reminds me of World of Warcraft Arena, where it was really fun to play, but it was rather difficult to watch, like as something, as an observer of World of Warcraft at at its peak was like, what, 14 million players every month, like, active subscriptions. That's a ton of players. That was massive. And so then to have this arena, which is like where the best of the best compete against each other, they didn't really think at the time about how that would be seen. So they didn't have, they didn't really have great tools for streamers or casters or observers and commentators to like look around the battlefield, rewind things, other things like that. Which I think esports nowadays, that's something that oftentimes they will build into the systems, or are ways to, like, maybe the actual event is happening like 3 seconds quicker than the commentators see, so that the other, there are, like in League of Legends, there are people that will focus very particularly on like a spell that a character casts. It's like, oh, an ash arrow is going this way, and then it's like, why are we focusing on that? Well, it's because the observer, who was maybe 10 seconds of time ahead of the color commentators, actually saw that arrow hit somebody, and it was a very critical skill shot that someone landed, and it really builds in the live show. It builds like suspense, because the color commentators are like, oh wow, what's happening, and so they get to act surprised still. They get to be surprised. And so I think that one of the challenges with a World Series of board games is we had kind of brought up a couple of times the concept of like the card camera, where like in Terraforming Mars you have a card camera, but in other games like Acquire you don't, and so you don't have those types of cards that you would hold in your hand. I think at least, but I know that all the games that they play are different, and so anyway, the concept is each like the camera for each game might need to be in different places, or what matters is going to change if they go from, let's say they go from Heat to Dune Imperium Uprising. It's a very different experience, and so to try to find a consistent way that they can showcase those things in a way that's very entertaining is a real, that's like the big challenge. And then I think acceptance is less of a challenge because people love board games. We have this big renaissance of more and more board gamers, like exponentially more board gamers have been, have joined the hobby from, like even 5 years ago. And it's become much more acceptable for, let's say, video gamers that only play Fortnite or only play whatever. Like they will enjoy, board games of all kinds with their friends because it's naturally a social experience. But then, I think that the one of the difficult parts is like the World Series of board games and watching what happens is starting to compete with very attention deficit disorder video games that are just like constantly like boom 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 changing, very dynamic and very fast, and are able to hold the attention of people like me with ADD DDDD. So, I think that's one kind of an uphill battle. And the way that they tackle this, I wonder, they do have a large prize pool. They're definitely taking themselves seriously with like these cool rings and whatnot. But I wonder, how will they, maybe like the games out there, like I can imagine the games out there that are really big, like we mentioned Roxley's Dice Throne on that podcast, but there are also other like trading card games that like Alpha Clash, who has like their world championships and other things like that. Maybe there could be well-known, well-documented, well-followed board games that could bring their hardcore following. I think something like that, where really what I mentioned World of Warcraft. What benefited World of Warcraft was that you had a lot of players that knew what was going on because they themselves were also arena players, so you could watch. And even though it was totally difficult to understand to someone who had never played World of Warcraft, I knew when somebody used their trinket. I knew when somebody used their big cooldown. Oh, the guy's like, the Beastmaster is enraged. Run away from him, and other things like that, right? And or the hunter. Anyway, but something like if the games were if they brought in their own fans that understood how to play that game, then that to watch, I think that's what or if fans like that were incentivized to watch, I think it would be really great to be like, oh wow, the Shadow Thief is crushing it at this Dice Throne tournament. And you might not understand what that is if you never played Dice Throne, but if you have, it's like, oh, I mean, I should play the Shadow Thief more often. And it would get people that like the game already to just kind of be able to celebrate the game. And I think that a rotating system of games based on popularity and the ability to play within a timely fashion and other things like that, I'm not sure if that's like the format that will get them to to ESPN. You know what I mean?
Yeah, it's very promising and something to certainly keep an eye out on. But I do see it becoming something quite large and big. So it's something to definitely keep your fingers on.
Yeah, and I think that that I could totally imagine them increasing the amount of space that they use and increasing again and increasing again, and it just as publishers come on board for multi-year contracts of all right, we're going to run a big, I don't know, like Wingspan was a game like Stonemaier Games, maybe they run a big Wingspan event, and that's a very like like a very customer facing thing. Chip Theory Games, maybe they run a big 20 strong event, maybe they like we can run a big raid or something like that, and it's like our day in hall B or in room C or whatever, and that could be, and then otherwise we've got a lot of fans that will become players in their events and other things like that too, so with a large open gaming area. So I don't know, I think it's a difficult balance to strike, but I think that finding and really kind of cherry picking games that have large followings where publishers will also kind of have your back on this as like a big initiative. I think that I would like to see something like that, I feel like that would kind of elevate. It's like, let's have this it's almost like getting I don't know, like a spokesperson for your company. If you have a famous actor as your spokesperson, they do things for you and they talk to their people for you, and they talk to people in commercials and whatnot that you air. But I feel like the publisher of large board game, very popular board games that naturally lean into competitive, like I mentioned, Dice Throne or whatever. I think that's a really potentially it would require kind of a little bit of a change in the model, but it would allow those publishers to each bring their massive audience and share the one live stream on about Dice Throne or whatever. And I think that's a way to get each of those videos to get thousands or tens of thousands of views more. So anyway, just some loose thoughts. We talked a whole bunch about the World Series of board games, and it's very intriguing. But in part 2, we get into this really a deep dive discussion on rulebooks and Kickstarter campaigns or crowdfunding campaigns, because Chris George every week reviews campaigns that are coming into a close, like typically last probably 10 days of a campaign. He'll attempt to review like all of the ones that are decent, that have or that are coming to a close. And we talk about alarm bells as in like red flags and green flags, like bad things and good things that you look for both on the campaign page as well as in the rulebook in particular. And something that we have never really talked about is the rulebook of a game and how impactful that is. So I really look forward to getting into that with you guys, but I don't want you to, we don't want to be like a 2-hour podcast. So we're going to split this into 2 parts, and we're going to let Robot Richard send us out right now, and then we're going to get into it next week.
Well, that's all the time we have for this week's episode of Crowdfunding Nerds. For more resources, articles, and to listen to past podcasts, please visit us at crowdfundingnerds.com. And if you have a crowdfunding question, we also have a page on our site where you can send a message directly to us. Please visit crowdfundingnerds.com/question. And if your question is a great question, we may include it in a future podcast. Thank you all again for listening to this week's episode, and we'll see you next week. Stay nerdy.